There we go. All right. So we're live. Okay, cool. I'm super excited for today. So I don't know if for everybody that's joining, same stuff goes as normal. If you've got questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll take you off mute and we can all just ask our questions live as it's a nice intimate group. I'm super excited to present Sandy today, the head of marketing at Pocus. I'd love you to give like a quick introduction to yourself and a bit of background about Pocus and what you do, and then we'll just, dive straight in.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me, Alfie. I'm so excited to be here. I love that you're carrying on the AMA torch, and fun to be on the other side. Because normally, as I was saying to Alfie before we kicked off here, I'm normally Alfie and having to run these, and so really excited about this. So I'm Sandy. I'm the head of marketing at Pocus. I've been at Pocus for a little over 2 years now. I joined the team when we had but a dream of a product-led sales platform and a small burgeoning community to focus on product-led sales. And since then, we've been really like just focusing on building this category of product-led sales, trying to define what is product-led sales, and helping the best PLG companies execute on their product-led sales strategy. So what is Pocus? Pocus is mission control for building your product-led sales motion and also building your pipeline. We help companies use intent data from their product usage, customer fit data, marketing engagement to surface the best opportunities and help their reps take the next best action. We work with customers like Asana and Loom and Webflow, ton of great PLG brands who have millions of users and a lot of opportunity just sitting there dormant in their pipeline waiting to be actioned. So yeah, really passionate about product-led sales, the future of go-to-market, which is what we're talking about today.
And if anyone hasn't already checked out the Pocus community, absolutely check it out. Because I think I joined, I can't remember how many, it's like at least 3 years ago, I think now. And
Yeah,
when
I
I
think you're
first
like
came from there.
first 20.
Yeah, that was awesome. And it's been such a great resource. So highly recommend it. I'm just going to pass the mic over to Sheila. I think she wants to start with a quick icebreaker.
Oh, I did want to jump in if you don't mind, Sandy. I wanted to also point to that community content because I've been reading all your stuff lately and learning, and I'm really appreciative of that. So if anyone has the time, check out everything Sandy's been posting. But I had a quick ask just because as we jump into these things, part of the ask is to get the group connected to you and vice versa. So before everyone rolls their eyes about the icebreaker, the question was, I want you to imagine you've got a free weekend and an unlimited budget, Sandy. What are you going to do with your weekend?
Oh my God, what a question. Um, I think book a flight somewhere for sure. And where would I book a flight to if I have an unlimited budget? I mean, this is so dependent on the time of year. Um,
And it's only a weekend. You have to
and
factor
it's
in
only a
travel.
weekend. I have to like really optimize where I'm going. I think honestly, I would go to northern Spain and just go on like a wine and food tour and then come back.
Okay, that's a great answer.
I love it. I'd also love an unlimited budget. Where's my unlimited budget?
I gave it
um,
to Sandy. I'm sorry.
yeah. I'll definitely join you on that. And also, there's so much amazing good food in Spain. Um,
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, so you posted a newsletter today. Actually, it just came out from Pocus, and I think this is a really awesome place to maybe just kind of kickstart. And it was around the evolution of the go-to-market motion. And I won't, give too much away. I'll let you riff on that. But I'd love to if you could just explain what it was about and just give some context as to how it's evolved over time, and then we can dive in there.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're really thinking about a lot at Pocus, specifically me and Alexa, the CEO of Pocus, and our CTO Isaac, we've been thinking about all the changes that have been going on in go-to-market, and kind of like these different eras of go-to-market that we've been going through. And it feels like we're at like a real kind of like inflection and acceleration point in how go-to-market is transforming. So if you think about, the last decade, I would say the dominant kind of like go-to-market strategies that have been popular have been focused on product-led. Like, let's make our products as kind of like end user focused as possible. How do we get them into the hands of our users as quickly as possible? And kind of like that is the growth engine that a lot of go-to-market teams have been focused on. And I would say what that has triggered is a focus more on really meeting buyers where they are, and on not necessarily kind of like a lot of aggressive push tactics, but more kind of like pulling them into an ecosystem and really focusing on their value. Um, all of that is also happening alongside, I think, some macro changes that we're seeing to things like email, and just like the email apocalypse that's happened in the last year. There's, I think, just been like a steady decline on a lot of tried and true channels when it comes to go to market. And I think if I were to like look a layer deeper, it feels like the market is just fed up of this, like, spammy outreach, not really thinking about where buyers are in their journey, and just kind of like throwing things at them and like focusing on this like volume at all costs, growth at all costs. I think the last decade has certainly been dominated by that. And what we're seeing right now, I think, is one, because of these macro changes, people are being forced to like have a bit of a reckoning with how they're thinking about their go-to-market. And just like the economics are no longer working in anyone's favor. You pair that with AI really like taking shape this year and last year, and like over the last couple of years, it's really hit this like inflection point. And I think we're starting to see a lot of folks accelerating towards a better future for go-to-market that is less focused on volume, more focused on precision, more focused on personalization, and ultimately like really doing what is right for buyers, and not necessarily thinking about just kind of like, I'm gonna push and push and push and spam and spam and spam until like get what I want. So I think that's like broadly the transformation that's taking place. And then happy to talk a little bit more about kind of like what that means for specifically like tactics and tools and data. But let me know where to double click, Alfie.
Yeah, for sure. So I've got the we'll have to send around the resource after, but there's I think you've got the five stages of the GTM. So GTM 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and then up to 5. There's one in the middle there, which is predictable revenue, which I think was it Aaron Ross, if I'm not mistaken. Is that
Yeah.
right? Ex Salesforce kind of made a name for going to the 100 million in revenue with Salesforce, and Predictable Revenue was a book that he wrote, and it was very much that kind of how do you build a sales organization, SDRs, account executives, and so on and so forth, and that was absolutely rinsed and repeated time and time again. The trouble with that is it's the costs also scale very linearly with your outright outreach. Conversion rates are absolutely taking a tank in, like you said, and it was on this old paradigm where there wasn't as much data available. We didn't have as many tools to be able to leverage that data. And now you wrote about GTM 4.0 a little while ago, and so product-led sales, having this data from first-party data, third-party data, and then we've got intent 2.0. So could we talk a little bit about the difference between the GTM 4.0 and 5.0, and what's the kind of key characteristics here, and then we can kind of tap into like tools and data and what this actually means.
Yeah, even going a little bit further back. So what Alfie's talking about here when it comes to like these different eras of go-to-market, I would say like right before go-to-market 4.0, we all talked about ABM, right? It was all about ABM. It was all about finding buyer intent. And that's what I like to think of as like the intent 1.0 era, where we're relying on these like third-party vendors to tell us if there was buying intent within the accounts that we were focused on. The problem with that kind of intent is that it's a black box, and you don't necessarily know what's driving that intent. And sometimes if you're targeting large enough organizations, it's really meaningless. Like knowing that Snowflake, however many thousand people there are within Snowflake, is showing buying intent, which I can't necessarily like dig into as a rep, tells me very little about where I should actually focus my time, what people I should focus on, what kind of messaging I should be applying, like what is the intent. So it was kind of like intent was this black box. It was very much at the account level. When we moved into go-to-market 4.0 and specifically this like move towards product led, I feel like we shifted from this over reliance on third party data to really starting to look at our own first party data and becoming more first party data oriented. And the reason is it is just one, I think, a better form of intent. Especially product usage data. I don't think you can get higher intent than actually seeing how people are using your product. But even if it's not product usage data, just even looking at your own marketing engagement data, looking at website visitors, like data that is in your control and you have some sort of ability to drill down further into that data, that first party data became so valuable in go-to-market 4.0, really product-led companies leading the charge because they just had an abundance of this first-party data. And that's really where Pocus has been focusing for the last 2 years is how do we extract the value of that first-party data for go-to-market teams? Because historically, product teams, growth teams have had a lot of access to this data and been able to use it to like, prioritize growth initiatives or prioritize new features in the product. But go-to-market teams historically didn't have access. And so Pocus has been helping unlock that data for reps so that they can use this like robust intent information to go and reach out to the right folks at the right time, depending on whatever their goals are, whether it's I'm looking for opportunities to convert a free trial user, or maybe I want to expand this customer. Relying on that first party data is going to be kind of, your canary in the coal mine that helps you identify where to focus. When we move into now this like go-to-market 5.0 era, I think what we're seeing is a resurgence of third-party data, but not like your old school third-party data. I think the quality and the quantity of the third-party data is a lot better than in the old school intent 1.0 days. So this is this thing that we're calling intent 2.0. And I think it's like this overlap between the first party data that you own plus this, higher quality, more robust third party data that you can now get from doing things like using AI to scrape the internet for all of these intent signals that might be scattered across the web. But also doing more to try and connect the dots between account level signals and user level signals, and kind of like triangulating all of these signals between first and third party data in order to find like this sweet spot of these are my kind of like best fit customers, but they're also best fit customers that are showing some sort of signal in the moment. And then the challenge becomes how do you organize and segment and then build playbooks on top of all these signals and then action them in a timely enough manner that it actually means something.
So with the kind of second wave of third party data, it's really interesting how we've kind of gone from like low quality third party, then layering in first party data. And I think like this is where Pocus came in, where there was just so much of it. It's actually, we've got all this data in a data warehouse, not using it at all, or we don't know how to surface this and actually give it to a salesperson or actually action this. And that was where your tool really kind of, I think it was the origin of that. Um, as we start to now have even more abundance of higher quality data, firstly, what does that landscape actually look like? Have you seen certain types of either insights or triggers, or what are the data points that people now have in access to, and what's led to this transformation between the old school third party data and the new one?
Yeah, I think, and this is where like I think AI is very much kind of driving the charge. The type of data that you can get access to now would previously been what your SDR was spending like their entire day doing, which is like scouring the internet, trying to find these intent signals that might be helpful in pinpointing the right person or the right account or the right trigger for their outreach. And those are things like looking for an increase in job postings with like a specific keyword, for example, or just looking for a keyword in general in folks' social media posts online. I think the type of like, I would say unstructured data
Mm.
is really the key there. So that's, I think, what AI has been really helpful in unlocking is this unstructured data that was otherwise previously either a manual effort or kind of like dubiously locked behind this kind of like black box score that you got from a vendor like a 6sense or a demand base.
So it's so funny when I look back at like my SDR days and the amount of time that I would do doing research. We would try and time it so that every time we sent a cold email, we wouldn't do more than 5 minutes of research because otherwise it's not economically possible, right? And within that 5 minutes, you kind of have to have a playbook of, okay, I'm going to check this on LinkedIn, I'm going to check their posts, I'm going to check the schools they went to, the mutual connections, and there's like all this like list of things. You explain it so elegantly, this aspect of the unstructured, like old third party data was just a spreadsheet with here's the account, here's the person, here are some tags that are along with it. And also, it doesn't necessarily tell you how to interpret that or how it's relevant to what your business is. And there was a lot of value in the SDR actually bringing that research to create something that could convert into a meeting. Um, the ability to take all these data and then use natural language models to make sense of it, super powerful, and that's just not been possible pre the last 12 months. So do you see I guess we can maybe talk about the landscape a little bit about these tools and how people are approaching this. I imagine that there's a whole kind of foray into tools that can go and get that data, that can surface that data and put that in front of the salespeople, and then tools that can also like action that data. So, capturing, surfacing, and then action, and maybe sort of slightly different jobs to be done within that process. But could you talk to us a little bit about how the landscape of vendors has evolved over the last X number of months to cater for that new era?
Yeah, I think on the kind of like surfacing area, we're definitely seeing folks like Keyplay and Clay starting to really own I guess I'm like trying to say this nicely. They're better. They're just better ABM tools compared to like a 6sense or demand base. Like they're saying like 6sense and demand base, no one seems to be terribly happy with these tools. Like let's try and find a better way to give folks access to this universe of accounts that exists in
Mm,
your SCP. And I think they're doing that by having more proprietary signals that they're working on, and also like giving folks access to the ability to like use AI, especially I think Clay is leaning into that area. Um, so I think there are some like newer products like Keyplay and Clay. I do think some of the existing vendors like a Zoom Info and also probably I would count like Apollo maybe in this category as well. Like they're I think shifting more towards like how do we make it easier for people to action the data that already exists in our platform. So they've historically been in like the surface, like help you find the contacts. And I think now they're moving more into like how do we help you action. So there's some changes there. But I would say like the go-to-market tech landscape is like very, very all over the place right now. There's a lot of folks that are either moving from one category to the other. So moving from like surface to action, trying to
mm,
cover more of the value chain. But I think the broad strokes of it, and this is one of the things that we're seeing everywhere, is like consolidation. I think folks are looking for consolidation of the jobs to be done in one tool versus like having to do it across several tools. And that's consolidation of like both the data side of things and I would say the workflow. So like you said, surface captured action. I think people want those in a single platform. And if I could plug Pocus, like that's our vision.
mm,
But I think that's certainly like what we're seeing across the market from our customers. Like, what are our customers asking for? Because like the challenge is there are a vast amount of signals now, which is great. Like, it's a great problem to have. But the problem is how do you organize and surface those signals in a way that's actually actionable? And so it doesn't end up just being, we're like playing around with the term like mixed signals, missed signals, signal blindness. Like these are all the potential problems you could have when there's such an abundance of intent signals out there.
Mm.
You don't want to get to a point where your reps are, working across too many different tools, trying to like make sense of these signals. You also don't want to inundate them with signals so that they just become like blind to the signals and go back to just, their old workflow. So like getting that right of I want to give them enough signals. I want to be prescriptive enough in the signals I provide my reps, and I want to surface it in a place where it's like really easy to interpret and take action on. I think that's the thing that teams are trying to get right, and which is why they're pushing for more of this consolidation.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see how some of the big players in the like sales cadences like sales loft and outreach are going to adapt to this. We've seen this kind of consolidation in that tool space where it's more they started off as like an email sequencer or a call recorder, and then they try, like, if you take like Gong and sales loft, there's two like different kind of approaches. One was an email sequencer, one was a call recorder, and now they're kind of merging into this, trying to be
Mhm.
this almost like the sales CRM but from the perspective of like that entire pipeline, very much on the sales focus side as opposed to like the marketing side, so maybe slightly different from the product led sales aspect. But there's this new generation of tools like you mentioned, Apollo, Clay, etc. It seems there is this focus has kind of started from data first and then finding the data, then actioning the data. And I can imagine these just really overtaking those kind of traditional companies, because those companies are operating for the predictable revenue, the GTM. I think it was like 3.0 kind of version of the back in the noughties. It's What I find fascinating is how the role of the actual sales team is going to change, because we've gone through this wave. You kind of see it all over LinkedIn where first, conversion rates go down. People start posting, messages of SDRs that have done poor, unpersonalized outreach, or, message the wrong person, and so on and so forth. And SDRs have got a really hard time. It's one of the hardest jobs there is. But the conversion rates are going down, but all the tools allow people to send more stuff. And so that's where this kind of, it has to change somehow. Now we go into this area where there is an abundance of data. I guess one of the first things I'd love to understand is, are the sales reps going to be able to use that to produce, good output, versus they could go and do that manually themselves and maybe they're still not able to do it? How are we going to be able to get that kind of automated aspect? Because that's when it really starts to scale. Like, can we do hyper personalization at scale? And I think that is going to come. But there's probably going to be a few kind of iterations as to how that works. And there's this negative perception at the moment that people don't want automated stuff. And I tend to disagree with that. I think what people don't want is non-relevant things. People don't
Yeah.
mind if things are automated if they get the perfect message in because it's relevant. And this is the sort of stuff, if you can surface data, if you can then action data and it's hyper relevant, then that is going to be the transformation. And people that actually adopt this are just going to far outstrip people that don't. It's going to be night and day.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's the relevance. Like nailing the relevance, I think is 100% to do with the signal and the timing. So, if you are focusing on the right signal but at the wrong time, the message may not land on your prospective buyer. If you're focused on the wrong signal, and then like timing doesn't even matter because you're not reaching out to them for the most relevant reason. So I think like when we think about building playbooks, it starts with first thinking about a goal. So what is my goal for this playbook? Because that's going to inform what signals I prioritize and which signals have strength. So for example, if it's like the goal is this is a cold target account that I'm like trying to get into an opportunity, the signals that I care about are going to be different than if it is a free trial and I want to get them into a paid account. So like starting with the goal, then thinking about prioritizing signals, and then tightly mapping the signals to the right action. And whether that action is like fully manual where you want the rep writing a one-to-one email because it's a director plus sign up.
Mm,
And so, like you want to get that personalization really right, and maybe AI can't get there yet. Is it like semi kind of automated where maybe you're injecting some like AI based on looking at the signal, Chat GPT or Toolflow could write you a response. Um, and you just kind of inject that into the email. And then there's like the fully automated where we only recommend doing the fully automated once you've proven the playbook the manual way
mm,
or in the semi-automated way. And that's how we think about playbooks in Pocus today as well. So you can kind of run these experiments, see how they're performing. Once you've actually proven that it can meet your goal, then you automate it. But I would like say that you should never automate anything that you haven't first proven out the manual way. Um, and you should never, I personally still feel like we're not at a place where you can automate things that are being sent to, exec buyers. I think you can like semi-automate them by plugging things in, but
mm.
fully automated, I feel like we're still a little further away, but I think we'll for sure get there. I think that's
Yeah.
the trajectory.
I think if you look at, you could do the comparison with the marketing space in particular and some of the AI tools that come out. We've spoken in previous AMAs about AI generated content. Well, this
Mhm.
really interesting thing with tools like Jasper and there's like a whole host of AI generated content tools. What I think is interesting is they had a massive adoption. Um, but if you kind of look behind the scenes, I think the biggest adoption was or were from teams who weren't necessarily creating content before, as opposed to people who already had a process that they were then trying to make more efficient or productive. A lot of it was, hey, we don't have a content writer in house yet. We have a one-person team. Like, how do we just start playing the game? How do we get into the content game and creating that content? So that's kind of 0 to 1, which is like a fantastic base because it democratizes access, right? And in the similar space with these kind of data signals, people that are relying 100% on automation, a lot of people are going to do it straight away, even if it's 80% of the way there or 60% of the way there, because they're now entering a game where they could send hundreds of emails when they didn't even have an SDR before. So, but for those companies who have a finely tuned revenue motion that actually requires that higher caliber, it's going to be interesting to see that how quickly are we going to get towards that level of quality. Um, I had a question around Pocus in on the direction you're going. Um, at the beginning, it kind of started out with, okay, here's this first party data from the product, which gives us unique insights into behavior, which we didn't have previously, that can give our sales team better information to do the right message, the right person, at the right time. But in theory, I imagine with the way that your product is structured, you can ingest data from pretty much anywhere and you can then do pretty much anything with it. So I imagine the direction is not just around, product data, and we're talking about intent 2.0 and these other data sources. Some of the playbooks you've mentioned previously on other podcasts and AMAs that I've joined in your own community talked about how we can take this product information, give it to a salesperson, convert from like free to paid and these sorts of things. But where do these playbooks go from here, considering the depth of data now is enlarged? Are you going to go to outside product teams, and where is this going?
Yeah, I mean, this is already happening with a lot of our customers because I think the misconception is that if you're a product-led business, all you're doing is running product-led sales plays. But a lot of these companies, they have products that are loved by end users, and there's like this great base of end users. But in order to get the enterprise license, you actually have to go talk to like a buying committee somewhere else in the enterprise that does not touch the product ever, probably, barely has heard of the product. And so like, what do those PLG teams do when there's like that chasm between your end user and your executive buyer? What you do is you have to go outbound. And so kind of like where we see this going is, and what I would describe all of this that we've just talked about is like it's warm outbound, right? You're not reaching out cold, you're reaching out to kind of like warmer prospects because you're seeing some sort of intent signal coming from them. And so this warm outbound playbook is really the bridge between what we do from like a product-led perspective and just kind of like pipe gen for any type of business, whether you're product led or not, any type of SaaS business that needs to get in front of the right buyers. And so the data there is you're not looking at product users, but you're looking more at folks with in the product led context. It would be looking at decision makers who are not currently on your product, but within that account. And being able to surface that in the same place, I think, is super powerful. So we've started doing this with this new feature we launched called Lead Finder. So when a rep opens up Pocus and they, need to go from individual users at Canva to the executive buyer at Canva, they can see their power users, and then they can also see like, here are the 4 decision makers you need to reach out to, and you can click on their profile and send them into a sequence just the same as you could with a product user. So that combination is really super powerful. What we're really excited about next is like the purely just doing outbound playbooks in Pocus. So being able to surface job switchers and website visitors, and using, like this kind of AI intent signal, to help you prioritize where you're spending your effort. That's kind of like the future vision that we're excited about, that we're going to be slowly rolling out in 2024. But yeah, lots to do there still.
Matt posted a comment in the chat, which I think is spot on. He says, often too, there is a mismatch between what sales thinks is a great trigger and what the prospect thinks is a great trigger. I couldn't agree
Yeah.
more. It's really interesting. Even just the thing that you were mentioning about, okay, here's a product usage behavior, and therefore we deem this person to be like a good fit for maybe like an upsell. That's kind of like maybe the insight, but what's the action behind that? Are you going to go and convert that to speak into a decision maker and actually start, okay, maybe your company's interested in this. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the right time to buy it, but you might be a good prospect. So we should go and do that action, and kind of bridging that gap between, yeah, how is that being perceived just by the user versus the decision makers. Super interesting. The skill set that's needed by the new revenue organization, specifically relating to AI, where do you think the kind of balance goes to on the onus of employees to be able to figure out how to use AI, which is a very broad like terminology, and we can double click into that, versus relying on vendors just to produce features that, whether they're AI or not, they're just a feature that does a certain job to be done, and all they have to do is just figure out how to use vendor tools. How would you think the landscape of just skill sets within the revenue function is going to need to change?
I think like largely will depend on the size of the organization. And so I can see that the earlier stage you are, the more onus on the individuals on the revenue team to be pretty data fluent, scrappy, and able to, if the tool doesn't exist or the budget for the tool doesn't exist, like they can kind of string together a set of solutions using DIY tools to make this motion work for them. I think for later stage companies, I think they will probably lean more on vendors to be able to like bring those features to the table. I think what's common across all of that though is that the role of, I think SDRs in particular, but everyone on the revenue organization becomes more on how to become really data literate and data informed and understand how to kind of like use data in figuring out where to spend your time, like where you're focusing your time. Tools are going to try and help you there and try and get you like 80% of the way there. But I think revenue teams will still need to like flex that muscle in order to figure out exactly who to reach out to. And in some cases, when it's especially multi-channel, figuring out how to kind of like be fluent in more of those channels and kind of like build more of a profile on LinkedIn and do more social selling, but in a smarter way. So I think there's going to be like more onus on being smarter about both understanding the data and then how to use it to do the things that will be harder to automate and harder to do from a tools perspective, which is like build relationships and engage with
Mm.
people in communities, on social. I think like flexing those muscles will be important. But definitely at like earlier stage organizations like Pocus, for example, if and when we hire an SDR, it's not going to be a traditional SDR. We like to use the term flex DR, where they're going to have flexible skills, very like multi-channel focus, very experiment driven, and extremely data fluent. Like that's how we think about this flex DR role.
I'm really excited for the day when we have sort of self-learning systems. So to kind of rewind, what's like the problem that we often face in these organizations, whether it's in sales and prospecting, whether it's in closing accounts, or whether it's in marketing, there's very often a lot of learning that kind of gets churned through. So we might learn, for example, this segment reacts well to this messaging or this particular, product positioning, and these kind of event-based triggers are really good for, converting at this, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of this learning that kind of gets churned through the organization. I've seen it most in SDRs because SDRs tend to be fairly short tenure, and they tend to kind of come in and out, and the knowledge goes. So you have to retrain reps just on what do you sell? How do you sell it? What's the best way? And that retraining is actually a very significant cost to the organization. I can imagine a world where when we have all these data sources, we have language models and agents that can then ingest that, experiment themselves, learn, and then continue to improve on that. But that knowledge stays within the organization. So it kind of becomes less the role of the individual contributor to kind of learn what is the right thing to say or the right time, but more just like, let's action the right, when this thing happens, we're going to action this. Um, it's all of a question of what's the timeline of how quickly this is going to happen, but we're moving at such a quick rate. I can imagine it being pretty quickly. And as to your point, I think the unlock is unstructured data, making sense of unstructured data, and then acting upon it. I think I'd love to know what your perspective is here, because you work with a lot of enterprise clients. Um, what is the reaction from enterprise clients when talking about this sort of stuff? Because this can be extremely exciting, but it can also be quite scary when you put things on, self-run mode, self-learning models, self-learning agents, and actioning things. When you feel like we don't have human control, that can be very scary. What's the response that you've had from enterprise customers in this regard?
Yeah, I won't lie. I think it's mixed. I think you get I think there's like a lot of enterprises actually that are really ahead of a lot of what even we're talking about, and they're experimenting with things and they're really excited about this possible future. And then I think there are others that are, very much cautious and like to do things in a more structured way and have more control. But I would say like the appetite is there. I think people are very excited about things. One of the things I'm excited to see in 2024 is like, do we make that shift from like toy to tool? And I think like that, I am already starting to see that. I think AI is becoming kind of more of a tool that's like embedded and ingrained in how people are thinking. And then I do think it comes top down, um, obviously in an enterprise organization, and the enterprises where there are those leaders at the top who are thinking about AI as like a real kind of important tool to have in the toolkit versus just like a toy that reps are playing around with. I think that is the difference maker.
Mm.
And so the more of those like leaders at those bigger enterprises that can get evangelized and indoctrinated into this way, I think, we'll see more rapid change as a result.
It's like that, concept of if you don't figure out how to disrupt yourself, then someone else will. And I think there probably is a lot of laggards that are just going to wait for other people to start kind of figuring things out and be like, oh, okay, we have some real competition here. We need to get on top of this pretty quickly. Okay, just a quick pause. So we'll wrap up in a couple of minutes, but I don't know if any of you have any questions that you'd like to ask Sandy. Please post them in the chat or raise your hand, and we can come off mute. And whilst you're pondering any of those questions, is there anything else that we haven't covered today that you would have loved to have talked about or yeah, dive into that we haven't?
I think the one thing I will say is go to market is very much becoming like this like super hybrid motion where I feel like the conversation for the last 5 or 6 years was like, are you going to be PLG or are you going to be sales led? And I think right now the answer is very much like both. And it's true across all of our most successful PLG customers that they are doing some sort of flavor of PLG. They're doing a flavor of like a product led sales or sales assisted motion, and they're doing sales led. And I want to drive this home that because I keep on hearing like it as if it's a binary choice, whether you're PLG or not. I think the future of go to market and the current state for a lot of go to market is it's hybrid. But I think where we have a lot of work to do is like making all those things work together. And I actually
Mm,
think this is where that data piece is so important. So knowing kind of how to orchestrate the data across those different motions, which signals are important to the team that's taking the more sales-led approach, which signals are more important to the PLG team, and then which signals are important to that kind of like product-led sales motion. I think that's where a lot of the work is that we need to do, and making those three motions maybe more harmonized together.
mm. It's almost like forget about the motion, PLG, sales led, inbound. It's really, are you surfacing data? Are you able to extract insights? And are you able to effectively action upon those insights in a way? And there's going to be always some kind of mix of where this data comes from, how people extract those insights manually versus AI, and how you action that. It's a really nice way to kind of structure that. Um, awesome. Well, let's wrap up there. Thank you so much for your time. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I could talk to you for hours about this stuff. So I don't know if there's any plugs, any recent product launches you want to talk about, anything else. Where can people find you? This is your time to plug everything.
Yeah. Oh, I will make all the plugs. I'm a head of marketing. So find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect there. Follow Pocus on LinkedIn. If you're interested in Pocus, definitely check out the website, pocus.com. Happy to, give folks a demo. And then thank you, Alfie, for plugging the community at the beginning of this. Always join the community. It's free. And it's a great place to meet other folks who are thinking about modern go-to-market.
Yeah, the community, I couldn't recommend it more, honestly. I think everything that we want to be able to start doing with Toolflow Connect, we're just ripping from Pocus. So you've been a really good role model from the community front, and I personally
I
got
love
so
it.
much value from it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. All right,
Thanks
everybody,
for
thank you
having
for your time. And this is recorded. We'll post this on the website and on YouTube as well, so you can check it out after. And have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks, Alfie. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye bye.